Thank you all for being here today. This is Ali Jang, Ali's Corner. We are going to start to bring it back again. And today we have a distinguished guest that we will not introduce anymore because they are just very amazing. And we'll be talking about a little bit the immigration law, the new immigration law that happens right here in the United States. And we will allow our guests to introduce themselves. And Jill, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure, thanks, Ali. Hi, everyone. I am Jill Martin Diaz. I use they, them pronouns. I am an attorney by training. I currently run the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, which is a new legal services and advocacy organization for non-citizens in Vermont.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So the show, unfortunately, we won't be able to make it on TikTok live because of just some verification that they are currently doing. But Jill, like they stated, that we are going to talk about the new immigration reform right here in the United States of America. And it seems it's keep on changing since President Biden announced it basically a couple of weeks ago. And we'll be having a little bit of discussion for 30 minutes about what it entails. And also hear best practices from the Esquire, right, Jill? And what is Esquire, for example, to start? And also, what is this immigration law in general? What does it mean?
Totally. So I am a lawyer by training, right? I went to law school. I got a license. That's why I have the signifier Esquire after my name when I introduce myself in writing. But all that means I'm a licensed attorney here in Vermont and in New York. I'm passionate about supporting access to justice for immigrants who are trying to regularize their status, to assert their rights and defenses in immigration court, and to defend themselves against removal. Immigration law is a really complex area of administrative law. What that means is it lives mostly with the executive branch and federal government agencies rather than in the courts. So it means that it's subject to a lot of changes, a lot of political influence, and not a lot of transparency or accountability in courts of law where you think of lawyers typically practicing. The interesting thing about immigration advocacy is the agencies do not require you to be a licensed attorney to do the work. So at Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, we're trying to create opportunities for local folks who come from impacted communities, immigrant communities, who are interested in undertaking an apprenticeship so that you can come to VAP, learn how to practice, and become accredited to practice immigration, maybe even licensed in Vermont without needing to go to law school.
Wow. So basically, if I was interested into supporting immigrants, people who are, want to change their studies and stuff, I can chaperone you and your office in order to get started. That's
exactly.
Amazing. That's just amazing. But thank you all very much for everything that you do, and also for the other lawyers for creating this organization. I mean, can you explain to us a little bit about what is this happening in the United States right now in terms of immigration reform?
Certainly. Well, I'll try. So in one sense, what's going on right now with immigration law and policy is pretty par for the course, consistent with how immigration's been treated in this country since the borders were imagined by the original colonists and founding fathers of the country. The law, the legal system, pretty early on decided that immigration is about national security. Immigration is about resource distribution, that there needed to be finite lines about who is in and who is out. And the Supreme Court early on established a pattern and practice of throwing their hands up whenever they were asked to review immigration policies and laws being passed by the political branches, by lawmakers, by the president. The courts were constantly throwing their hands up saying, this is a political question. We're going to leave national security and immigration to the political experts. And as a result, what's evolved is a system that was explicitly racist and explicitly punitive. Deportation, this concept of exclusion and deportation existed in our earliest versions of immigration law, and were explicitly based on race, origin, national origin, political opinion, right? Like things that now we think of as protected classes. That would be unlawful to discriminate based on those issues. But in immigration law, that was good law, affirmed by the court until the mid-1950s. So in the one sense, we see like restriction happening now in the Biden administration that is kind of consistent, right? It's not, I'm not fully surprised. On the other hand, it is completely antithetical to the values we represent on our Statue of Liberty, that we represent in our laws as written. Congress has made very clear in the Immigration and Nationality Act all of the pathways that individuals can pursue to regularize their status. Asylum is a really important one. And what we're seeing now are attempts by Biden to do what is in his presidential power to constrain asylum seeking at the southern border.
Okay. So basically, no one can ask asylum from within the United States. That's one change.
So the way the law is written by Congress is that all a person has to do to be able to apply for asylum is be physically present in the United States and apply for asylum and declare their fear, right, to the right authorities. So there are folks, Vermont Asylum Assistance Project helps asylum seekers who entered without detection, maybe irregularly at the southern border, people who entered in airports and at land crossings with visas and other statuses. The only two things that a person needs to do to seek asylum are to be physically present and declare their fear, right? So what Biden is trying to do at the southern border is create situations that would prevent people from becoming present in the U.S. to declare that fear. And with these new rules he's proposing, to create to give a lot of authority to border officials to make a decision about whether someone entered improperly and use that to bar them from asylum without a right of review or access to legal help.
Okay, wonderful. Wow, and my understanding from the get-go was basically when we talk about immigration in the United States, it's at the discretion of Congress and not the president, right? And it seems now the president is trying to do something. And some people are saying because we are approaching the presidential elections and he needed to do something about it. And as you can see in the background that he had a debate just yesterday, right? And I'm also hearing that, since that executive order was put into motion, things also have been changing, right? But in details, what does it entail? We understand that some people will need to ask for asylum before they enter now, but what else? I heard some people now, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, there are good stuff too. But what other two or other elements are included in the?
Definitely, yeah, and I appreciate the framing of your question because I am not a political pundit, and I blissfully skipped the debate last night to take care of my own mental health.
Yes.
But certainly, folks are looking at the changes Biden is proposing right now, and comparing them to changes he's been proposing his whole presidency. And it's there seems to be consensus that this is an attempt to make some compromises, political compromises, by trading relief for certain populations. By that I mean, The southern border has become a focus and kind of a symbol of immigration policy, asylum seeking at the U.S.-Mexico border, to be specific. Trump introduced a lot of very sweeping restrictions on asylum seeking at the border. To your point about whether that was like within his power as a president, no president had ever tested the limits of the laws that Congress wrote the way that Trump did. And of course, those laws were challenged in court, and now Biden is using similar authority that Trump used to enact sweeping policy like Trump did. So as you mentioned, one is to try and restrict asylum seeking at the border. So introducing measures that would it would put people in expedited removal proceedings if they enter irregularly, seriously constrain their ability to win asylum. Enact sweeping policy like enact sweeping policy. No, that's okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so that's one piece. Also, there would be rebuttable presumptions that an asylum seeker bears the burden of overcoming. That if you travel through other countries on your way to the U.S.-Mexico border, you should have sought asylum in those countries first. There are very limited exceptions, but the decision-making power is going to be given to these officers at the border who aren't in an open court of law. The proceedings are not being recorded fully. The language access issues down there are rampant. No one has access to a lawyer, and people are sleeping in terrible conditions, either in temporary shelter or being unhoused on the Mexico side of the border, or they're in ICE facilities, prisons on the U.S. side of the border.
Wow.
So that's the border, right? The next day, as you suggest, Biden proposed a new program that he hasn't published the rules for. But basically, he's trading the asylum seekers for the Dreamers and the DAPAs, the parents of Dreamers who Obama never got to fully realize his Deferred Action for Parental Arrival program for. So folks who have been in the U.S. for a long time, who are in mixed status families, who would have family-based pathways to regularize their status, but cannot because they've accrued unlawful presence and other issues of inadmissibility. Biden is proposing a program to kind of wipe the slate clean and clear up those grounds of inadmissibility to make it easier for people to apply for the immigration relief from within the U.S. and promote family unity.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's like a much more, typically politically like favorable population, mixed status families, business owners, hardworking Americans, right? This idea, but he's throwing asylum seekers under the bus.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, but now right before the executive order, President Biden did also. There were already some pending cases that were already subject to the judge, and the process has started. Now, will we erase all of those? Everyone need to start over, go back outside, and try to come back in? Is it the case, or there are exceptions?
That's a great question. So typically when these immigration policies are being enacted under the law, they tend to be effective the date they were passed, or the policy will dictate a day when a policy is effective and when it expires. So in this case, the Biden policy that we've seen so far, we haven't seen this family adjustment yet. The asylum seeker policy has come into effect. Anyone who's already in the U.S., who's already got their case in process, those cases will continue as normal at the way that the law was the day that they filed their case, right? The only exceptions are when there are changes in the immigration agency around specific legal standards of who qualifies for asylum and who doesn't, those new laws apply the day that your case is decided. So an example would be Trump used his executive power to roll back decades of case law providing asylum for domestic violence survivors. he exercised executive authority to overturn that precedent. And so cases that were being heard while that was the state of the law, they had a lot harder time proving up their cases for asylum. Biden came in and used the same executive authority to overturn that again. So DV asylum is back on the table.
Wow, wow. I mean, this must be very hard for a lot of people. But we are so happy to have people like you, your organization, Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, helping so many people. And maybe let's try to come back here in our Green Mountain State and just ask the amount of people that you are serving, right? And also, yes, maybe as the first question before it's yeah.
So we're starting small and growing intentionally. Right now, I was hired in January. I have hired another advocate who works with me, and we've hired a third person who will join us in October. So right now, we're offering limited assistance or limited advice to asylum seekers. So people who have questions about their removal proceedings, about their asylum cases, people who want us to review their applications that they've prepared for themselves, or to sit with them and fill out their applications with them for them to file. That's all work that we're doing. And we've been able to help dozens of folks so far with this kind of limited model. The idea is that we want to see as many asylum seekers get their cases pending as possible before a potential inauguration of a new president. Because we know now that new presidents mean new policies and lots of change. So as many folks as we can help in the coming months, that's our goal.
That's good. That's very good. Wonderful. Now, I hear sometimes some people who already have started their cases, seeking asylum in a different state. And they would want to move to be close to a friend or a family member elsewhere. Is that recommended, or that's not something that people should be doing?
It's totally expected. The agencies have processes for you to update your address with them when you move. When life happens, people move for lots of reasons: for work, for family, maybe even because they'll have a better chance of getting an immigration lawyer in another part of the country. The only population I would say, speak to a lawyer before you do it. If you've applied for asylum within the last 6 months, and you've applied for your work permit, or you haven't applied for it yet, if you're in the first 6 months and you haven't got that work permit card in your hand, moving in the middle of your case could cause them to punish you by pausing your eligibility toward the work permit. So new asylum seekers who haven't gotten their first work permit, I would say sit tight, get your work permit, and then make your moves.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay, wonderful. Yes, so I mean, it seems that Biden's immigration law is already into order. What is the implementation should look like? Like, is it already in order, or there are still processes in order to put it into effect?
This is the question of the day, right? How is any of this going to be implemented? The agency has a long practice of exercising prosecutorial discretion, given resource limitations, and I say that in air quotes because the combination of CBP, ICE, and the military form the largest private law enforcement entity on earth. So there's plenty of resources being devoted to these armed enforcement machines of the immigration policy world, but the laws are so expansively written and so draconian, as they're currently written by Congress, that it has never been possible for the executive to implement the law to the full extent. And it's been, in fact, they've been spending a lot of resources and achieving opposite goals. Now we're having businesses close, and we're having worker shortages and family separation and community destabilization, population shrinkage in rural places like Vermont. So we've actually been working at cross purposes with our investments as a country. But in any event, whether or not the organization, the executive branch is going to have the resources to implement this has yet to be seen. Right now, all of immigration processing in the interior has really come to a grinding halt. It's really difficult for applicants of any kind in any proceeding with USCIS or the immigration court to get their cases decided and finalized and get their immigration benefits because everyone's been seconded to the US-Mexico border. Whether or not these border closures are going to result in the redistribution of resources back to immigration processing in the interior, I don't know.
Okay. I suppose. Yeah, I was also just wondering if you have any advice for those, because, they are vulnerable people. And I'm pretty sure that there are other people who are trying to just take advantage of them because of the vulnerability they are in. And if you have advice as a lawyer, very passionate about this work, what that advice would be for those young men, women, or whatever that are trying to have their statuses changed? What are some best practices?
Enact sweeping Yeah, so this is such a tough question as an access to justice advocate who has very limited ability to represent people myself because I'm trying to distribute my resources, spread myself very thin. But I would say, proceed with caution when you're seeking legal advice. Just this week, I met someone here in Vermont who was targeted advertising immigration help by a provider via Facebook who lives in another state, and that person promised this person, the advocate promised this person the moon and the stars, charged them a sum of money, had them sign an agreement that they understood they were applying for a green card. And then when we looked into the situation, the person had no legal eligibility for any green card pathway and had spent money on this unscrupulous advocate. And what's interesting about those cases is that there aren't immigration remedies for individuals impacted by predatory behavior. You can report those people to the consumer affairs offices in the state's attorney general's offices. But if a person has been brought or brings themselves to the attention of the immigration authorities and they're not actually eligible under the law for any relief, the authorities can now decide to enforce removal against them simply because they know about them. So just really proceed with caution. VAP is going to be working to expand our resource referral list on our public website so that if our intake is closed, as it currently is right now, until September, folks, there's a list of trusted partners that we warmly recommend that you can seek help from.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, you guys heard all of it. Yes, I'm going to speak a little bit in Wolof, kind of summarize, and also everyone that are viewing here on CCTV channel 17, if you're watching us live right now via CCTV Town Meeting TV, you can call at 802-862-3966. Okay. Now, again, to remind everyone that we have Jill Martin-Jazz, Esquire, I love that word, who's the executive director of the Vermont Asylum Assistant Project, and we are just being advised that we have 8 minutes left for the show. Okay. And again, I wanted to apologize to say that we were not able to put it on live on TikTok, but next time, yeah, we will be able to do so. Okay. Now, bu dee yéen a ngi may dégg ma koy wax ci kàllaamay wolof tur bi Ali la te maa ngi ànd ak tey ki ñuy wax Jill Martin-Jazz Esquire, lawyer la nekk fii moom mooy executive director ci benn association bi ñuy wax Vermont Asylum Assistant Project, right? Tey nag daf fi ñëw waxtaanee affaire immigration fii nii ci États-Unis, lan mooy changement yi nga xam ni moom la président Biden indi. Bon, léegi nag dinaa defaat yeneen vidéo wax ko ci olof pour mu gën a leer. Okay, nice. Thank you, Jill, so much for being here. Dañ koy gërëm di ko sant and for all the work that you do, because this is just amazing. Now, one more question was specific to, because immigration, whenever we talk about it, it's a federal issue. And at times, we see sometimes, police, right? For example, Burlington Police Department, for example, I remember as a city council, we voted on a resolution, no police migra. So basically for the police to not get involved, right? And I was just wondering if you hear sometime cooperations between ICE and police, local police officers, or that does not exist. Do you come across those type of things sometimes?
I do. Unfortunately, I think in Vermont, it's there are far fewer incidences of cooperation that I hear about than I did in New York and than I currently do in New York. Just in November, a client of mine, when I was at the Vermont Law and Graduate School Clinic, who's also a constituent of Migrant Justice, was there was a tip from New York State Police. He was driving on the New York side of the lake, and there was a tip to ICE CBP, and ICE CBP pulled him over and put him into removal proceedings. And so that was a very explicit example of police just being like, hey, I see someone driving, they look like an immigrant because I'm racially profiling them. If you pull them over and ask for the ID, I bet you they're not. And so that was a clear pipeline, like a Poli Migra case. In Vermont, what I've been hearing since then is like, it's more in whispers where like, I don't know how, but 4 people were filling their gas tank up at the gas station in Franklin County, and ICE just happened upon that gas station and arrested them all and put them all into removal proceedings. So we imagine that it could be coming from law enforcement. It could be coming from any other stakeholders, right? In Vermont, there are protections that try to limit that any violations of the state policies. But people are independent actors, right? And there have been cases in Vermont where individuals have gone against policy and gone ahead and called in if you see something, say something type immigration reporting. So. That is not to say, like, my goal is certainly not to instill fear in folks for moving around in the community, but instead I think it's a call to action for Vermonters to really pay attention to and lift up movements at the local level, at city council or in the state legislature or administrative agencies that help to use local laws to make Vermont a safer place for immigrants to live. No matter what's going on federally.
Yep. I mean, yes. And I think this has been a great and wonderful show. We probably have now 3 or 4 minutes left, and maybe some words of wisdom that you may have, like, what do you want to say to the viewers, especially the asylum seekers, and to the community in general? Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and to speak to your viewership. I'm really honored. And I hope to do it again. I think that we're going to continue to see changes in the immigration system, in step with the federal election cycle and potential inauguration in January and whatever follows. So I think there's going to be a lot of information flying around of all different quality and accuracy. And I think, if you're reading something that's printed, check the date, check your sources. Opportunities to get together and talk like this about the key takeaways, I think will be really important in promoting the spread of good information in the months to come. And yeah, please see me and Vermont Asylum Assistance Project as a resource in the next steps.
Yep. And as you can see, I think on the screen, VAAPVT, it's your website,
That's right?
Yeah. And you have info at VFPP, people can contact you directly to talk about it, yes, as you can see right here, which is really, really amazing that we have such a great service in the state of Vermont. And will all the people from California also just, whoever comes, you serve, or you have to be Vermonter?
Right, who's a Vermont, right? And
Yeah,
it's funny
yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
not a Vermonter by all accounts, right? So my partner was born here, and apparently she's not a Vermonter either. Anyway, but so this is our Vermont, and
Okay.
at VAP we say if you are in Vermont and you are a non-citizen and you have immigration legal questions, see us as a resource. We're here for you.
That's cool. That's amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Jill, for the time, for the energy, and for the passion that you have serving people. Because if I was an esquire, I mean, yeah, I'll drive an Telsa and stuff, but you're passionate about the work that you do, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Ollie.
Guys, again, please check out the website, check out the work that you do, and I'm pretty sure all the information about that they do and how to contact them is at the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, vaapvt.org, right? There is a phone number for those who are comfortable to call and have more questions. Jill, this is great. And Town TV, television, CCTV Town Meeting, thank you also so much for hosting us. Alice Corner is back. Now, this is the first show that we did with an amazing leader in the community and people lover, right? Yeah, and then next month, we will be talking a little bit about what is happening specifically in Senegal, since now the new government have 100 days. We'll be inviting people from both sides to join us via Zoom to just talk about what is happening, and what is the direction of the country, where is it going. So probably also in August, right, we will have the Vermont National Guard Executive Director, Chief General Knight, to also talk about the state partnership that they have with some countries in West Africa as well, such as Senegal. Okay, Alice Corner is back once a month and for 30 to 45 minutes. Thank you all so much for watching us, and thank you CCTV Channel 17 for hosting us, and most importantly, thank you Jill Esquire for having us, and this discussion has been amazing, and I'm pretty sure we'll be doing more of these type of things whenever we have time, because you're very busy.
Well, no, lucky to be here. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yes. All right, guys, thank you all so much, and see you next month right here at CCTV Channel 17. Have a great evening.